Several months ago, when Karin and I first began emailing back and forth, I was telling everyone that there's this remarkable woman I'm corresponding with, and for me, it's especially wonderful to have her here because she's one of the few writers in Stonewall's collection that has her own shelf of books. She doesn't have a book or two, she has a shelf of books. And the other nice thing about Karin's books is they're really checked out a lot. It's great for me to have someone here who's not only a great writer, but someone whom our patrons really enjoy reading. That's important, and I think it's a great treat for all of us. All of you know about Karin's remarkable career. I love the fact that she has these wonderful Florida ties with Naiad Press and Bella Books. That's especially wonderful for us here as a Florida institution. I'm happy, thrilled, and delighted to introduce a remarkable woman, a great writer, and someone who's also become a friend over the past months in all of our various email correspondences, Karin Kallmaker.
My plan tonight was to talk a little bit about what I write and why I write it, and why I think it's an important part of our community and our literature. And then I was going to read samples from a lot of different books, and hopefully not bore everybody to tears. I think I was going to start with the reading, because I write romance genre primarily. And in the literary world, there is nothing further down than the romance genre. Everybody looks down on it. It's just trash. We hear that a lot. They're throwaway books, beach reads. And yet, as Jack said, they're the books that people read. And particularly is that they find in the books a validation of the things, even if they don't have them in their life, that they wish they had them, or they believe they have a right to have them. And they come to a romance novel, and they see in the romance novel a reflection of who they wish they were, or the way they wish the world would be, or the world they've managed to make for themselves. Hurrah! So I'm going to start with a scene from a book called Finders Keepers, which was out last year, and I've done it again. I don't have my reading glasses on.
I did this anyway.
So this scene's from Finders Keepers, and it's a scene where the main character, whose name is Marissa, and her mother are having dinner. And she and her mother have a very strained relationship, and they've had many misunderstandings through the years, which they're going to resolve in this scene. And I don't often write characters with a picture in mind that's really firm. I like to leave my characters sort of undressed, if you will, so that the reader can put the length of hair in, or they can make the eye color, and if it's a story about a mother, maybe that mother could look a little like theirs, so it's not definite. But when I wrote this scene, I had Meryl Streep in mind for the mother, right out of Devil Wears Prada. That very firm kind of woman. So they've ordered, and so they're getting down to actually talking for the first time in years. Finally, her mother shifted in her seat. Your father always said you and I were oil and water. I thought if I said something enough, you'd hear me. I thought if I told you how I became so unhappy, you would learn from my mistakes. Well, I didn't think you believed you'd ever made any mistakes. Marissa shook her head. But oil and water, well, that makes sense. Maybe because I'm a blend of both of you. You are like your father in so many ways, and like me, and goodness knows, I'm stubborn. Marissa rolled her eyes. That's the understatement of the year. Her mother sat up straight in her chair. Just because we're having this little heart-to-heart doesn't mean you can be rude. Then she burst out laughing. At some point, the evening had turned into an Altman film, Marissa decided, or Fellini. Any minute, a juggling dwarf would walk through the room singing the Notre Dame fight song. You're stubborn, and I inherited it from you. Deal with it. You inherited being gay from your father. Maybe, Marissa shrugged. If you don't eat your salad right now, I'll eat it for you. And how long did you know I was gay? Years. Her mother finally poured some dressing on her greens and took a bite. So what the heck was with the dates every year for the summer ball, the annual fussing about what dress I wore and if my date and I would take a good photo? Geez, I hate all that. Well, it's your own fault, her mother said. Well, partly. What else was I supposed to do? I asked about your romantic relationships. I hinted broadly that you were free to bring anyone you wanted home. You wouldn't tell me you were gay. I thought if I pushed men at you, you'd tell me the truth. Well, dang it, that made sense. It really sucked that her mother might have had reasons for some of the ways she acted. But you were so totally homophobic about Dad. I thought you'd act just the same way toward me. And when I told you, you did get angry. You had that disappointed face you get, which I hate, by the way. You said I should have picked a better time and place. Well, maybe I lost my temper a bit. I'm human. Her mother looked down her nose at Marissa. What I meant was maybe you could have told me a long time ago. You kept so many secrets about yourself from me, and it did hurt. It felt like your father's secrets. It hurt, and I blamed you and him and myself for not being able to show you that I could be trusted. I had to find out about you and Octavia starting that business from a friend. Well, is that why you told me we'd never be a success? I was angry. She shrugged. I get childish when I'm hurt. I own it, and I'm sorry. Well, I didn't know that you were hurt like that. I thought it was just disappointment in me. I was always me not meeting your standards, from my waistline to my careers to my friends. Well, do you blame me for some of my reservations about what you were doing with your life? You gave up that good, meaningful job at the women's clinic for what looked like a pipe dream with Octavia. You worked nonstop, and you never seem to sleep or spend any time on yourself. You don't seem happy to me. I thought you and Octavia were a couple, and you weren't telling me that either. We're not a couple. Now was not the time to divulge your senseless crush on Octavia, especially if it was finally waning. It was hard enough not to sob openly into her napkin. You were successful and brilliant and elegant. I never felt as if you thought I could be any of those things. Don't you think I'm strong enough to be successful in life? They both wiped away tears over their trout and steamed veggies. Lemon juice is gross, Marissa pronounced. Well, what brought that on? Diet books are full of lies, and I think the biggest is that vegetables with just lemon juice and a bit of pepper are delicious and satisfying. Oh, but lemon juice and pepper are delicious, her mother protested. Just what we need. She signaled the waiter, who was promptly solicitous. My daughter and I require hollandaise sauce. Is there any available? Of course, he said. His pace was decorous as usual as he departed on his quest. Mom, I can't eat hollandaise. Of course you can. It's just lemon juice and pepper with butter and egg yolks. And those vegetables will be delicious, tossed in just 1 or 2 teaspoons. How much damage is that to your diet? I've been so careful. I don't want to mess it up. Marissa stubbornly ate a piece of unvarnished broccoli. Oh, yummy, she thought. I am so loving the flavor of this. I am a grown woman, and I'm sitting here obsessing about whether I can have a freaking saltine. You're thin. This is the one thing that hurts me that you can't possibly understand. You're right. I don't understand, sweetie. One day I noticed you were putting on some pounds, and I couldn't figure out what had changed. You ever had much of a sweet tooth, and you'd always been reasonable about food, and then you were eating. Marissa made a start on the trout, though she didn't feel hungry. Her mother did likewise. When a small gravy boat of hollandaise was presented with a flourish, she poured what she hoped was just 2 teaspoons onto her vegetables. It smelled wonderful. There was very little, she decided. That butter didn't improve. Okay, this was a good idea. You're right, in small quantities, butter is a beautiful thing. I'm sure if you keep up your hard work, you'll be successful, and sooner or later, I know, you'll find the right person to make you happy. I don't want someone who notices me just because I'm finally not overweight. If I lose weight and suddenly Aki wants to date me, well, that sucks, Marissa decided. I don't want that, she thought. Yet I want someone who thinks I look good. Self-image is really confusing. She nearly brought up Linda, then caught herself in time. Instead, she said, half smiling, Mom, are you actually urging me to date women? Really? You're sure you're okay with this? Oh, for heaven's sakes. To Marissa's utter shock, her mother rose to her feet, then stepped into her chair. With a grin at Marissa, she planted one Mephisto pump next to the hollandaise and the other alongside the salt and pepper. Standing on the table, she looked down at Marissa as the dining room fell silent. Marissa, dear, I want you to be happy. If that means you date 50 women, I don't care. That's right, she gestured at the room. My daughter, my brilliant analyst, entrepreneur daughter, is a lesbian, and I am her very proud mother. Her speech ended. She took the waiter's hand, and he helped her down from the table as if he was assisting a queen from her carriage. Conversations resumed. Anyone who walked into the room now would never believe that only moments before the elegant woman dining with her daughter had been standing on the table. Finally, Marissa said, not smiling at all, That's not the first time you've stood on the table, is it? I don't know what you mean, Marissa. Eat your vegetables.
So I wrote that scene because I wanted... Do we all have a mother who would do that for us? Maybe not. Many of us may have mothers who feel that way, and maybe we don't talk to them and give them the trust and the chance to show us that they can be that way for us. And many of us have mothers who, in a million years, don't want to talk about it, don't want to acknowledge it, and don't want us to be who we are. But it doesn't mean that we can't think the world ought to be better than that. So I think that's what the romance genre does, is sets a way for the world